Okay, thanks for joining today this session, which is a quick start guide to Cowork in Microsoft 365. As the webinar title says, essentially the purpose of today is to give you the information that you need to start using and leveraging Cowork in Microsoft 365. So we'll cover two main things. The first one is briefly show you the setup steps to get started. And then we'll walk you through its core features and functionalities and explain how you can start using them and making the most out of them. I'm particularly excited about today's webinar because I really love Cowork. I think it's an awesome tool. And in fact, when I first activated it into our tenants, it was a Friday and I ended up working over the weekend, which I never do because I was so eager to go and discover all the possibilities and try different things and see what it would make of some of my key workloads. So why is it so exciting? Because it is the first AI tool inside the Microsoft 365 ecosystem to which you can meaningfully delegate tasks. With regular Copilot, you have to interact with the AI. It's not a tool that goes off and does things for you. It's a tool that assists you as you go along, and you have to be there in the window and give it input at regular intervals to get results. Cowork in Microsoft 365, on the other hand, actually can manage on its own complex multi-step tasks. So you give it the steps and it just goes off and it follows them, and it can run in the background, and you can actually delegate more than one task to it at the same time. So working with Cowork is a lot closer to working with a real assistant than working with Copilot ever was. And this is the first step to truly becoming an agent boss, if you've ever heard the Microsoft term, which is basically the notion that AI does your grunt work for you, and you're here as the AI manager to guide it, teach it, and then review and correct the work. That's the first tool that actually takes you close to this result. So I'm super excited to show it to you today. My name is Sandra Koutzenko. I'm the Director of Transformation at 365 Talent Portal. And for anybody who doesn't know the company, 365 Talent Portal, we provide hiring, training, and partner practice acceleration services, all specialized within the Microsoft ecosystem. So in my role right now, with everything that's happening, I spend a lot of my time managing our own internal AI transformation and also supporting our clients with us. And that includes Microsoft partners and Microsoft end users. That's why it's very important for me to understand tools like Cowork ahead of everybody else, and why I spent so much time actually gathering data and testing things. And now I'm sharing all of the knowledge with you all. So we'll dive right in. And as I'm going through the content, if you have any questions that come to you, just pop them into the chat. I have a lot of things that I want to say, but I'll leave some time at the end to make sure that I review anything that has been asked. So first of all, let's talk about how do you actually activate Cowork and get it into your workspace, because it is not there by default. There's a few things you need to do. And first, we have a couple of steps that must be performed by a company Microsoft 365 administrator. The two things that need to be done are, first, you need to enable frontier features inside your Microsoft 365 tenant. Now, that means access to currently Cowork, but also all and any preview AI features that Microsoft is still working on and are not yet released to the general public. What this means, and you do need to consider this as a company if you haven't done it yet, is that on the plus side, you do get access to the newer features ahead of everybody. But the downside is you are getting access to AI tools that are not yet finished. And so that means they are largely unreliable. So if you have a big team, it can be hard to manage the challenges of people starting to transfer processes to tools that are not fully finished and stable. So you need to consider this, and it's a valid choice to say, you know what, actually, I'm going to wait for Cowork to be released to the public before I start trying it out. But if you're happy to experiment, then I've linked here the steps to follow. This is the Microsoft Learn guide, and you will be getting this presentation at the end to tell you how to actually enable that feature. And then once you've done that, the second thing that you need to do is authorize Anthropic as a data processor inside your Microsoft tenant, because Cowork is actually run by Claude. And so it needs to process some of your data in order to be able to give you its answers. And again, here you have a link to the Microsoft Learn guide that walks you through the steps to make that happen if you decide to go ahead with this. Once the admin setup has been performed, everyone has the ability to add Cowork to their workspace. And we are actually going to demo this inside the tool. So this is your Microsoft 365 window. This is what happens when you log into office.com for anyone who's not done that routinely. And apologies, tabs. Okay. So in order to find Cowork, you can see that for me, it's already there. But if it's not, you need to go into agents and it's going to show up here. But if it doesn't, you just type Cowork and it's going to appear here in your list. And when you click it, so for me, it says open because it's already added, but you will first see add here. So you just click add and it's going to add it to your workspace. And then it will show up. So if you want it to always stay here, you can actually pin it using that little pin and unpin icon. And that's it. So it's fairly simple. Next up, I want to talk to you a little bit about the Cowork interface. If you've worked with Copilot already, a lot of that will be at least a little familiar to you. You can see that you have a chat window. You have some suggested prompts that you can try. And then once you start entering information and asking it to do things, you will see your history and also scheduled tasks, which we're going to talk about a little bit later in this webinar. As in all Copilot chats, you have the option with this little plus button to add content from different sources. You can add any work context, and as with Copilot, you get access to people, files, meetings, emails, whole SharePoint sites, Teams channels, so the whole ecosystem of your Microsoft 365 tenant. And there's also a tab that does not exist in Copilot that is called Skills. And we're going to talk about what it is a little bit later. But just so you know, when we're talking about skills, you find it in plus and add work context. You can also upload images and files. But I want to draw your attention to this little customize button, which they keep changing. Because it allows you to add plugins, and the very interesting plugins that I'm super excited about are the Dynamics 365 plugins. And when you add them, what they do is they allow Cowork to read data from your Dynamics systems, but also write and edit data. So for example, you can have Cowork create and update opportunities in your Dynamics 365 system, which is something that I know many salespeople are going to welcome because nobody likes to update a dynamic system. So I've been very much using this feature and enjoying it quite a lot. Now that we have covered the setup, let's discuss how do you actually get things done with Cowork. How does it work? Let's see it in action. So essentially, the thing that Cowork is really strong at is performing complex multi-step tasks with limited human supervision. So you can actually give it a whole process, step-by-step process that you want it to follow, and then let it do it and go off and do something else. So there's 3 different scenarios in which that can be useful to you. The first one is just an ad hoc multi-step task that you need done. For example, you want Cowork to research a specific topic, then put the data into a PDF, then save the PDF into a specific SharePoint folder, and then maybe email a link to your team so that they can go and see the document. If you have a multi-step task that needs to happen on a regular basis, for example, every week, you can actually schedule it with Cowork to happen on a regular basis. An example of that, which is actually a real example we're using, is that every Tuesday, Cowork reads the transcript of our Monday weekly meetings, the ones in which we talk about our active opportunities. And it pulls data about what needs to be updated. You know, for example, if an opportunity needs to be moved 1 step further into the pipeline, or closed won or closed lost, we usually say it very clearly in the meeting, and Cowork identifies that, and then it goes into our system and it checks that everything's updated, and if not, it actually updates the opportunities for us. So that runs automatically without us having to ask it to do anything. And then it sends me an email report so that I can check what's been done, because it's really important to always check what Cowork does for you. It can still make mistakes. And then if you have a task that doesn't need to run on a schedule, but you expect you will need to repeat, just you need to decide when, or you need to provide information for Cowork to be able to work, then instead of a recurring task, you will actually build a skill. And essentially a skill is you're teaching Cowork a set of steps to follow or a process, and then it can repeat it for you at any time you ask it to. One scenario, which has saved me so much time, is I've built a skill for Cowork to prepare proposal first drafts for me. And the way that it starts is I give it a link to a discovery meeting I've had, link to the transcript, and then it has all the steps and all the knowledge, and it goes off and it prepares the proposal draft, and then it sends it to me for review. And of course I need to make edits, but it's a really, really good start, and it saves me a huge amount of time. Now I've put a slide. This is essentially a summary of what I just explained, of how to use an ad hoc task versus a scheduled task versus a skill. And it essentially depends on how often do you expect to ask Cowork to perform the task for you. And does it need to run on a schedule, or do you need to be the person to trigger it? So again, you'll have that and you can refer to it when you are working with Cowork. Now, I want to actually show you how this works through a demo. So it's kind of a half demo, because one of the things to understand about Cowork is that it takes time to perform tasks. That's the downside. You know, it can handle complex tasks, but it actually needs time to think. So very often when you ask it to do something, you know, it's not a model that's designed for quick interactions in the way Copilot is. You actually have to wait for it to think through what you've asked and produce what you have requested. So I did a lot of that ahead of time to make sure we wouldn't spend all the webinar waiting. And here, this is an example of how you ask Cowork to perform a multi-step task. This is an example of something that would be an ad hoc task. And I actually used a real scenario because I think it's always more compelling to show something that is an actual requirement. And here, so we have a really nice website, which, however, needs a little bit of improvement, because we've added a lot of new content to it lately, and we have a lot of services. And so that's one of the things we are aware of, is that it can be sometimes a little bit confusing for people who come onto our website to find their way towards what's right for them. So one thing that we're working on very actively right now is improving this so that it's easier for our visitors to find what they need on the website. And this is one example of how Cowork can help with a task like this, because a good starting point is to get an assessment if you want to improve something. What are the areas of the website that would benefit the most from being improved first? So if you want to do something like this, like the objective of this prompt is to get a website assessment, website health assessment. So here is how I prompt Cowork in these scenarios. First of all, you need to explain a little bit what your objective is. So here, help me improve the conversion of our company website for key persona. And here I linked a demo profile, but you would actually link the information related to your target persona. Act as a web design and web optimization expert and follow these steps. And this is essentially the key difference between working with Copilot and Cowork, which is that to work with Cowork, you need to give it all the steps. And it's very similar to if you were explaining someone who just joined your team, what's the process to follow. So here, for example, I'm asking it to search its knowledge in the web for the key principles that help build a website that converts, because it's important to have the right knowledge. So this is the grounding step. Then I'm asking it from that knowledge to draw the key criteria to assess a site's conversion health and what method to follow to measure it. And then I'm asking it to ground itself in the persona profile that I provided, and I explained this is the person for whom we're optimizing the site. So this is, and again, if you explained it to a person, it would be very similar, right? You would need to tell it first what knowledge it needs to use. And then I'm asking it to review our website, and I provided the URL, to identify our key strengths and our key weaknesses, and then to create an HTML report showing the conversion health with all this criteria. Now, HTML, that's my personal preference because I really like the way that Cowork designs HTMLs, and I find it very easy to read, easier than a Word document or a PDF. And so for me, it's just a good way of seeing the information. But you can ask for any document you want. It could be Word, it could be PDF, so PowerPoint, an Excel spreadsheet, so it can produce any documents you like. And then I'm asking it to save it into our marketing site. And I'm actually giving it the specific path to the folder that I'm looking for. And this step here is one of the things I really like about Cowork, because very often when I create a file, I don't need it to be inside the chat. I need it to be in a specific place so that I can find it again, so that my team can access it. And I find that AI saving the file in the right place for me actually, it accumulates. It's like small time savings that over time make a difference. So I'll show you now, when you enter this prompt, what happens. Let me find the right window. That is not the right window. This is, okay. So this is the prompt. And I've asked it to skip the save because it wasn't needed for that. So you can see that then it starts reflecting and it actually types things as it goes. So you can see the reflection process. And then when it's done, it gives you like a summary of what it did. And then it gives you the actual report, which I'm hoping will open. There you go. And you can see it's like a nice branded report. It's giving me a score. It's giving me the criteria that it's followed, the persona. So it's pulling everything important. And then the scorecard, which is the part I really want, with every key area. And honestly, it does a really good job of, I've used this in a number of scenarios, and it is really good at finding the right criteria and giving you assessments that make sense. It's not perfect, but it makes sense, and it gives you a good place to start. So you can see easily what are the weaker areas. And then it tells you a summary of your key strengths and weaknesses, and then top 3 actions, and then recommended additional actions to take. So that's a document that we can actually use. And of course, we can refine it and work with Cowork on getting it even better. But honestly, if I were to do something like this by hand, it would take so much longer. And I find it always really helps me to get things done, to get those nice little starting reports. Next up, building a skill. So, like I said earlier, a skill is something that you would build when you expect to need to repeat a multi-step task more than once. The previous example we just saw, that's not really something I expect to do a lot. I hope, once we optimize the site, it's going to be good for some time. So I don't think it's worth building a skill for something like this. A skill would be something you expect to use at least a few times a month. And it works very much in the same way as the multi-step task. The only difference is that first you need to ask it to build a skill for you. And that's one thing that I found a bit challenging at first with Cowork is you don't have an interface that you go into, with a button, create a new skill. Everything that Cowork creates for you is done via the chat. It's the same for scheduled tasks as well. You actually need to ask it to do it for you. And one thing to understand as well is that it's a good idea to define the name of your skill or the name of your task, because otherwise Cowork will define it for you. So I find that it's helpful to just use usually 2 words with a dash in between, something that's going to be easy for you to remember. And here the scenario is a real scenario that we're using internally. It's a skill called discovery prep. Now it's another sales scenario, but you can use an equivalent to prep for any type of calls. Here, the purpose of this skill is to help us prepare before discovery meetings with clients. But you could have an equivalent if you're a project manager to help you prepare for project status meetings. So there's, any type of meeting that has the same repeated steps that you need to take to prepare for them could be turned into a skill. And here for the skills, I like to start by explaining what I'm going to be providing, because very often my skills, anyway, start with me giving data. So for example, here I say I'm going to give to you the name of a contact, the name of a company, or information referring to a recent inquiry. Usually it's one of the first 2. Your role will be to help me prepare for a discovery call with that person or company about the opportunity. And so then I'm asking for everything I need in a discovery call. And I'm telling it, so same principles as earlier, where to search, which is my inbox, Dynamics 365 sales, and also our customer care SharePoint site for relevant information about the account and about the company and about the contact. I'm also asking it to search the web for what's happening for the company and for this person right now, because it's always very useful to have context that can help me understand what are going to be this person and this company's top priorities as relates to their inquiry. And then I'm asking it to create a report. Now this time I'm asking for a Word document, because in that way I can use it to take notes during the call as well. And in it, I'm asking it to add current opportunity summary to remind me of what we're going to be talking about on the call. Account history, and that's always very useful to see, what's happened before. How often have they bought from us? Have they inquired a lot and never actually purchased? Because it helps to lead the conversation in the right way. The current situations, the results of the web research, and a suggested call flow. And I actually have research that I did with Cowork on how to create effective discovery call flows. And so I'm actually asking it to ground its proposed flow in these principles. And then I am actually asking it to save it in a specific place, like in the actual client folder, so that I don't have to go and move it afterwards. And again, I will show you what happens when you send that prompt. If I can find the right window. So first. Yes, this is the first one, which was actually here. So when you ask Cowork to build a skill, you can see it's doing its little thinking process. And then it actually provides you a little skill scoring card, which is, I think, pretty cool. So it tells you how it's doing in terms of different criteria. And that means you can actually tweak it. And for example, here you can see that we haven't set any guardrails against what happens if something unexpected pops up. And it actually tells me, there you go. Here, some information, how do any proposes to me to optimize it, which I didn't do this time because it was for a demo, but it actually helps you to improve what you build with it. And then to actually use the skill, so there's two ways. One is to just type /discovery prep, and actually you can see there's a suggestion. And then, for example, the name of the person. And then you just hit enter, and that's enough because it has all the information on what to do. So from that, it's going to build your discovery prep document, which is really awesome. Or if you forgot what your skill is called, you go here, add work context, skills, and discovery. I had to make two because there was a little bug and challenge, but this is how you would find it. And then again, you just click it and then type either a person name or a company name, and it does the same thing. And then once you actually type it, so you can see here my input, discovery prep 2 with my name. I use my name because I actually sent a fake email to this demo account earlier to get some information. And you can see the thought process, and then there we go. We have a Word document, and I'll show you quickly what it looks like. So this is an example. And again, you can refine it a lot more to get exactly what you want, but it has everything I asked for: the current opportunity, account history, which is taken from actually demo emails that I've sent, but it has pulled them appropriately. Current company and situation, suggested call flow. And so I can follow this. Often I do review it and make a few edits, but again, it gives you a really solid starting point. And also because it works from previously researched and validated principles, it actually is pretty good quality from the start. Finally, let's talk about a scheduled task, and the principle is really the same. The main difference is here, you will not provide any input. Scheduled tasks need to be able to run by themselves without you actually needing to provide any information. So if it's anything that needs you to provide, like a company name, for example, you would need to build it as a skill because otherwise it can't run, right? So scheduled task, essentially, you need to ask it to create a scheduled task. You can give the name that you want, and you need to tell it when it needs to run and how often. So this is also a scenario that I'm actually using, by the way, and that I think could be useful to a lot of people. Right now with AI, things are moving super fast, and I'm really struggling to keep up. And so I thought Cowork maybe can help me. So this is my Microsoft News reviews, and it pulls information about Copilot updates and about Microsoft Learning curriculum updates, which are two things that are changing really quickly right now, and I'm struggling to keep up with. So every week I get a little report that's tailored to what I need. And so you can see here, I'm asking task name, how often it runs, the purpose, and then the steps. And this is always kind of the same way. What it needs to parse and search for, what type of sources to prioritize, and then the two key areas to focus on. And then again, I've asked for an HTML report because that's my personal preference, but it can do this as a PDF. It can do this just as a native email. You can have it directly in the chat. So you have a lot of options to tailor this to your own personal preference. And once you have asked it to build the task for you, it's actually going to, I can't show this to you because it doesn't stay, but it's going to pop this little window showing you what it's written, and then you can edit it or just activate it and run it by clicking that little button. And when you click the button, that's the one. When you click the button, so it runs the task as a test, which is actually a really good idea to do. And then you can see it's got its little reasoning, and then at the end, it gives you the news report. And you can see it's organized in my two key categories, Copilot and AI, and then official Microsoft Learning with certifications and new things that are happening. So this is perfect because you can see it's easy for me to read. It has the focus that I'm looking for. And I could tweak this even more, like as you're getting your reports, you can actually edit your task so that it's even more relevant to you. So I know it sounds like a lot of information at once, but in truth, I've actually kind of repeated a lot of the same thing because those three types of scenarios follow similar principles, really. The main thing to keep in mind is, and actually it's right there, tips. So you can use this little slide as your summary. First of all, you're explaining the process as if you were training a new employee. So you need to make sure you provide Cowork everything it needs to be able to help you, which means where to find the source data, what source data to use, whether it's inside your own work environment, in Dynamics 365, in Microsoft 365, or on the web. Then step by step, what it needs to do, in which order, that's very important. And then what you want as a result. Describe that in detail. What format? Is it a file? Is it in the chat? Is it an email? Do you want a file and an email? So you have a lot of options there. And test, refine, and iterate. So even if you don't need it straight away, just test it immediately and correct anything that's not working the way you want. Making the most of Cowork. So to build on what we've just said, there's one thing that's really important to be aware of, and it's the fact that Cowork is in preview. I mentioned earlier that choosing to activate frontier features could lead to a number of challenges. Cowork does have a number of bugs, and it means that you need to be very, very mindful. Things I've noticed so far is, first, it doesn't have access to the regular Copilot memory, and it does not really have its own memory either. There's a little workaround that's a bit complex and doesn't always work. So essentially, when Cowork tells you it's going to remember something for you, it's not really true. It does not know its own capabilities. It will tell you that it's able to do something when actually it's not possible, or much more often, it's going to tell you it cannot do something even though it can. For instance, it's going to tell you, I can't save this file into SharePoint because I don't have access in this environment. That is a lie. If you see it tell you I can't save into SharePoint or I can't save into OneDrive, it is 100% a lie. The thing is, it's really hard to make it understand that it actually has the capability. Things sometimes disappear, and actually this morning I had to recreate all the chats that I just showed you. I made them yesterday, and then I logged in this morning and they were all gone. The skill was still there, but the scheduled task had disappeared and all the example chats had disappeared. That happens on a regular basis, so you need to back things up. There's a cap on the number of skills, which is at 50, so it's not too bad. It is very unclear whether there's a limit on the amount of scheduled tasks that you can have. And that's another limitation, is that the information is not always available. I actually looked for that information and there doesn't seem to be any documentation about it. So it's not always easy to find answers if you have questions like these. So a few tips to work around these. For that, I've actually sacrificed a couple of skills to provide some instructions that I'm repeating a lot. For example, our writing and brand guidelines, they need to be applied to any output we provide, we create. And I kept myself having to repeat and always pull the branding files into the conversation. So instead, I just built a writing and brand skill with all our writing and brand information so that I could just tell Copilot to use the skill whenever it created documents for me. And hopefully in the future, there's going to be memory and I can free up that skill slot. But right now, I find that this is a good workaround. Also, when you're working on something really big, like a huge project, and you're expecting to have a lot of conversations with Cowork, ask it to create a file with a context. It can create markdown files with all the information you provide, all the relevant links to the relevant documents, status on what's been done so far, so that if your chat disappears, you can always go and retrieve the document and continue into a new chat. There's a couple other tips that you can look at later on, because I'm conscious that I actually planned a lot to say today, and I want to make sure we go through everything in the 5 minutes we have left. So I proposed a few use cases, and again, we won't dive into them into detail, but you will get this presentation. I provided a few example skills in addition to, well, this includes a couple of the ones we've looked at today, and then a few other examples for skills I've built and skills we're using internally as a company, and a few example scheduled tasks to inspire you for what's possible. Now, how do you take the next steps and move on to Cowork and Copilot Mastery? So, first of all, the key thing is to go and try it out yourself. This presentation actually has a huge amount of information that you can use to start creating your skills and start generating, scheduled tasks and start just working with Cowork. And the best way to really get a sense of its capabilities and what it can do for you is to experiment with it. And to tell you the truth, it took me weeks to find the best ways to use it. And I'm still learning because it keeps on changing and evolving. It's very much a work in progress from the Microsoft perspective. But again, this is a really good starting point. And if you want to go further into your mastery of Cowork, I want to make you aware that we have some programs that can help. The first one is we actually have a workshop about using Cowork in Microsoft 365. It's a 4-hour workshop, and in it, we dive deeper into the concepts that we've seen today so that you have everything you need to really transfer your key processes to skills or to scheduled tasks. So we really look at, what needs to be a skill, what needs to be a scheduled task. And we do hands-on exercises to see what kind of challenges arise when you start actually working with the tool. How do you work around it? How do you optimize what Cowork provides as a result? And then beyond that, I also want to share that we have 2 sets of programs to support partners and end users through their Copilot's journey. So on one side, we have go-to-market services. It's for Microsoft partners who want to build, market, sell Copilot, and there's like a whole range of offerings just for that. And then we have our Copilot user training workshops, which are all about learning how to use Copilot, learning how to build simple agents in Copilot, everything you need to know to really leverage your Copilot licenses. If you want to discuss your Copilot strategy and see whether we can support you, I've included in this presentation a link to my booking page. So do not hesitate to use it and book an intro call with me. Now, in the 3 minutes we have left, I see it doesn't look like there's anything in the chat. Does anyone have any questions about what we've discussed today?
Hey, Sandra.
Hey, Eva.
Hi. This was fantastic. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
I was a bit distracted, so I'll have to, look up again and maybe see the recording. But I wonder, if because what I know is that Copilot Cowork is sorta trying to replicate what you get from, I don't know if you know Claude. Do you use
Yes.
Anthropic's Claude itself? Okay, so there you have, projects, for example, where you can build, some configurated workspaces like you just described with the Cowork. Even though I think this is a better option if you want to, like you said, kind of use the resources within the M365 that you use for other stuff, right? And that's actually what I'm not seeing. I still haven't played around with Cowork enough. But what Cloud Project does have is, so you have projects, literally. So you can kind of go back into each of those projects,
Yes.
Per clients or whatever internally, some of the things that you want to have kind of singled out. This is what I'm kind of not seeing in Cowork. Like is that true, or am I missing
So
something?
it doesn't exist in Cowork.
Yeah.
I also was disappointed in this when I discovered Cowork because it's a great feature in Cloud. I hope that it's gonna come. I mean, it's very much the beginning of Cowork in
Yeah,
Microsoft 365.
exactly.
So there's a lot of things that are not there yet, but might come in the future. But no, it's not that you've missed it. It is not there for now.
Okay. Yeah, because that complicates certain things. It can,
Yes.
and
Yeah, because
also
you
I
have to
wonder.
provide again the information every time you start a new conversation.
Yeah.
There's that, yeah, it would be really amazing to have that feature. I do hope they bring it in.
Yeah, thank you. Because I was like, thinking, is this something I'm saying? Because when you use it in Claude, it's really easy. You can, sort different things across
Absolutely.
different project. Yeah. And then
Yeah.
just go back and without, like you said, repeating. And that's the power of it. I mean, that's one of the
Yes.
biggest things, right? You are having a setup thing from the start, and you're just gonna go back into that and without mixing with other things. That's my other concern.
Yes, absolutely.
When you kind of, if, because yeah, it's AI, it's still not quite there yet. So it can get, confused.
Yeah, very true. No, you're right. That'd be a really amazing feature to get in Microsoft 365 as well.
Okay, thanks.
Are there any other questions from anybody? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you for joining. And if any questions come to you after the webinar, you are very welcome to reach out. You will be getting the recording and the slides very soon if you want to get back to anything that we've talked about today. So thank you so much. Have a lovely day and enjoy your experiments with Cowork.
Thank you so much, Sandra. Thank you for the great webinar. It was really practical. Thank you.
Thank you, Vistra.
Yes, we have to practice first and then we can come up with the questions.
Yeah, very true.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for the presentation.
Thank you for joining.